don't know why my Telegram is so big on my smaller monitor. I don't know why.
Whoa, there's like a lot of pop-ups that just appeared
On
Zoom.
the
Yeah, like you can release here. Webinar's not streaming. Practice, start.
approve.
What?
All right, and I had the Zoom link also live. So I think we're streaming live on Zoom, FYI. I have to close it because I'm hearing it in the background.
Cool. Do we have to start?
Yes, I'm going to start it in a second now. I think we are live streaming. Yeah, so we're officially live somewhere. Hey guys, we're about to start on the actual YouTube. Well, YouTube's live. We're about to start the actual session on Zoom for those who are coming in. All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. We're going to give it a few minutes as folks start to trickle in. We have made the Zoom links live, and everyone should be able to see the YouTube streaming as well. Let us know if you can't. Maya's going to be in the chat taking any additional questions that you guys may have. We've already seen questions that were submitted in the community Q&A Google Sheet and Google Form. Thanks for folks who are continuing to submit those questions. And we're excited to update you guys today. So we'll go through our list of updates in terms of company updates, what we have progress for product development, some questions on the Dex listing and timing that I know everybody's excited and eager to hear about, and some rebranding elements that we're focusing on for Konstellation. So we have quite a bit to talk about today. We'll start sharing with some updates, and hopefully through the actual AMA session, as we share updates, we'll be answering all of the questions that you guys have that you've submitted or pre-submitted to us. But as I said, feel free to ask more questions in the chat, and we will do recaps of this whole session. So we'll do a written recap as well, posted to our Medium page, and this will continue to be live on our YouTube, so you guys can reference it. And I think I had one more thing to say about our timing here. So we think that this is probably going to go between 30 and 45 minutes. We have the time blocked. So as you guys have questions, let us know. And I think we could kick it off saying with kind of any additional intros or general updates that we want to hit. And like I said, we'll hit Q&A from the sheet after we kind of do our updates and circle back on anything that we may have missed.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Natasha.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, maybe it's morning for you, maybe it's evening or afternoon, potentially. So hope everyone's doing well. We're really excited to be here for our, slated July AMA for Konstellation and Dark. First of all, apologies. It's a couple of days pushed based on our initial schedule. Going forward, we'll obviously try to stick to the original schedules. We've been very busy and heads down. So we have a lot to talk about, a lot to get through. Also, a lot of great questions that came through. A lot of them have to do with kind of our next steps. But we'll be going, hopefully a lot of our updates will help kind of address those questions, but we're going to hit them head on as well, kind of toward the end as we are still compiling questions right now. So give everyone a great update on what we've been working on, and then we're going to be hitting the questions. So that's kind of the agenda for today. Brief updates on just general Konstellation, right? So what we were working on initially, as everybody knows, was to become the decentralized infrastructure for alternative assets and asset management. So as with any kind of, I think, blockchain project or a project in DeFi, the vision does evolve as technology evolves, as obviously the industry has grown as well. And one of the things that we were looking at while we were building asset management, once again, is that these tools that we were building in DeFi, the smart contracts that we were building, the protocol level adjustments that we were making based on the network that we use Cosmos to build, was applicable in more use cases than just asset management. That's what we started realizing more and more. And which means that, we always look for where do we have the best use cases? Where can we provide the most value into the DeFi industry? And so, we've had a slight expansion of what we wanted to build in Konstellation Network to include the capital markets. And so I think some folks here do have a financial experience, so they understand what the capital markets are. But it's basically a bigger subset than just asset management, alternative assets. Capital markets really determines how do you connect the capital that needs to be invested, that needs returns, right? ROI, ROE. We think about things like APY right now in DeFi with the counterparties that need this capital, and how do you create that in a seamless fashion? And traditionally in capital markets, we have three prongs. We have the equity markets, and we have the short-term and long-term debt markets. Right now, a lot of this is still evolving in DeFi, but they're evolving in a very fragmented fashion. So I think we have a great opportunity to be able to tie all those together to create a centralized hub for decentralized capital markets. And right now we think about DeFi as like lending or staking or yield, but in actuality, there's so much more market share and opportunity that can be built. If we start thinking about things the size of IPOs or bond offerings, or even just like long-term real estate debt, for example, is another asset class that's super interesting. We think that we have the expertise, we have the team, and obviously we've already had the original vision of being able to build this type of backbone on top of Cosmos. So we're really excited to announce that. And along with that, we have some also updates coming up on our rebranding side, which I'm going to leave for Natasha to go over for the rest of you here. On the team hire side, as with every other kind of blockchain protocol, hiring the right expertise, hiring the right team members, hiring the right, folks with a vision, right? It's not even just technical expertise anymore. It's really folks with the vision that can help us grow. So we're very excited to say that we have been successfully able to hire 2 smart contract Rust developers. And, COVID was both bad and good, as we said last time. And I think the great part of it for us was that we've been able to hire globally, right? So our targets for being able to identify how do we grow our team, how do we identify the smartest and most motivated team members, that search went global, and it's been very fruitful for us. And we've also hired 1 TypeScript, JavaScript team member who's helping us connect the blockchain with the rest of the world, right? So a blockchain is only as good as the users, and obviously that requires a certain level of expertise that we've brought onto the team. So we're very happy that we have these 3 new team members that have joined, are able to bring all of the cool, DeFi features and smart contracts that we're developing to market, hopefully very, very soon. One of the other things that we did provide a brief update on last time, but I'm going to hit it again here, is the testnet. So we were able to successfully complete the first iteration of the testnet. The first iteration of testnet was relatively basic. It was the basic protocol the protocol network based on Cosmos, without some of the smart contracts that we were going to build on WASM. What we've decided, and which is what's also kind of pushed out our schedule with mainnet launch, is that all of the smart contracts and development features that we want to develop on Cosmos and Konstellation Network should be completed before mainnet rollout. This will help prevent any rollbacks or reboots of the network we have to do if there are any flaws in the system. One good thing about Cosmos is that it's expanding very rapidly. There are tool sets being developed. There's an amazing developer community out there that are developing what we believe to be the most important use case, which is the cross-chain, interchain bridges and links. But with this type of rapid expansion also comes kind of a shaky framework, if you will. So it's moving very fast. Another thing that's a very famous quote in DeFi is test in prod, right? So you're going to be testing in production, which is, it's both good and bad. But in our case, we think that it's important that when people put their capital at risk, that it's robust, right? Obviously, we're not providing investment advice, but at the very least, like, it should hold up its end of the bargain as part of the infrastructure on completing the transaction as it should be completed. So, just a recap and a summary of that, there's tons of development being done in the Cosmos community, which we're so happy to be a part of at Konstellation. However, at the same time, there are a lot of tools that we need to develop internally after a lot of homework that we do on whether we're going to use some of the libraries that exist in the market. So we're very thankful to the volunteers that were a part of the testnet system. The folks that applied and got accepted were able to go through all the tasks. That was very helpful in testing the system. Now the next step for us is to get up the network with a smart contract in place and run a testnet on that as well. So without going into too much detail, because we're going to be issuing a Q2 development update. So we're going to be sending out a written update of the development that's been done, both on network level, as well as on the smart contract level, as well as on the use case level. So there's kind of 3 levels to this where we think that's important to enhance the value of Dark, obviously to promote the use cases of Konstellation Network. A lot of the work that we've been doing is related to the library building, as well as the wallets, the native wallets for Konstellation Network. And I don't mean wallets like ETH wallet or BTC wallet, but native wallet for the Dark token and the blockchain explorers that need to be used with it, as well as the libraries that need to be built in order for the front end to work, as well as the works on the Node and the Oracle systems. And you guys are going to be pretty excited about what we're going to announce on the Oracle systems. But working on how the nodes are going to be working once the mainnet is launched, as well as the Oracle system and the staking systems. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to have much more color on that, but I think you guys are going to be pretty excited about what we're working on there. We've been sharing that with the council as well, but we wanted to share that broadly with the team. What's coming up right now, a lot of the work that we're doing is still around the smart contract system. We're developing, this is where I think I can provide a little bit more color there. We're developing a staking system that's native to Dark that will allow Dark users to stake their tokens, mint a stable coin, an over-collateralized stable coin, and we have a really interesting algorithm that's different than anything else in the market on its flexibility and its usage of market volatility as a determination of risk. It's not just like, okay, let's over collateralize by 2 times. We think that's good enough. It's actually determined based on the community's contribution, right? If Dark does well in price, in volatility, in growth, then the staking becomes even more robust and strong in returns. So sorry, I digressed a little bit, but staking, where you're minting a stable coin that's native onto the Konstellation network, then you'll be able to trade synthetic assets with that stable coin, which is over collateralized by Dark tokens. And these synthetic assets, I'm going to leave this as a surprise. We won't talk about it here, are going to be things that you probably haven't seen before. Exposure potentially to real world assets or real world asset classes. And I don't mean just equities. So real world asset classes where you'll be able to get that type of exposure, as well as more traditional exposure, obviously. But this will give all of our Dark users a very close to earth trading mechanism without having to liquidate or sell Dark. So instead of having to sell Dark to get this type of exposure, you'll be able to stake it, benefit from the staking rewards, benefit from the long-term growth of Dark, but also benefit from trading as well. So we think it's going to be a win-win situation. A lot of the smart contract work that we have left for this quarter or before mainnet launch is really around how do we protect investors the best in this staking system. It's something that we've been pondering for a long time, because as you've seen in the market, most likely these staking systems and these DeFi systems are not necessarily built with the investor in mind. So it's not built with the investor's best interest in mind. So the liquidation mechanisms, the protections or the notifications, the lockups, they don't necessarily work in favor of the investor or align interests. That's the most important thing. We want to align interests so that you're more incentivized to be able to stake the Dark, but at the same time, that, as long as you act, relatively responsibly, these assets are relatively safe. Obviously, this is not to speak to the performance of other assets. That's not something that we can speak to. But in terms of looking at volatility, for example, over a time period versus like a one day dip or one day pump, is going to be something that's interesting for us, right? So we think about things not in terms of only price, but also in terms of volatility, in terms of liquidity. How do we look at the risk, the overall risk of the asset class? That's going to be really important when we analyze these situations. So we're spending a ton of time on that, but we're having spent a ton of time on that. I think we're very happy on where we are or where we're going to be when we launch. I think I mentioned this before. There was a ton of stuff that we were developing, including the swap, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But this is all kind of part of that suite of issues that we faced in development, which was, there's a lot of stuff that comes out that's like, hey, this is off the shelf and you can use this. It's not necessarily off the shelf. I don't know if we have a lot of developers in the community, but when things are announced, particularly on Medium, Twitter, or Reddit, it doesn't mean it's ready for prime time. It means that somebody either started working on it or it's some sort of library that hasn't been tested. And this is kind of the general trend of DeFi, which we're all for, because that can push innovation forward. But when we think about the specific things that we want our dark users, our investors to be able to use, we want it to be safe. So even the swap, that is actually another major reason for our delay in the swap, is because we were trying to use an existing tool set that does exist in the market. It didn't perform, or it didn't produce the results that we wanted it to produce. We ran into a lot of glitches, we ran into a lot of issues. And we thought that building on that tool set to make it work the way we wanted may actually take longer than starting again, which we did a couple of weeks ago. So we're very close now on the swap. So we're just developing it completely internally. We have the talent in-house. We've prioritized it now. So we're very, very close. So we should be able to announce that relatively shortly. But once again, this is all, all of the work that we're doing, and we'll talk about the listing in a bit, is tied to the mainnet as well. So all of these swaps, the mainnet, the token, the use case, we wanted to come out at the same time. We wanted to come out at the same time because that behooves the token economy, right? It, like, having the direct use cases and providing you value as a dark user is going to be more important than just, market makers pumping and dumping, on the market. So, we'll obviously support dark and its liquidity going forward. But, having this and growing the community and growing the direct use case is going to be really important. So our timing may be a little bit pushed, but, it's all for the better, in our opinion. I know folks are kind of, anxious about it, but it's coming, and we'll talk about that a little bit toward the end during the Q&A. The other thing about kind of the swap and the wallet and the features, there, we explored a lot of different options, like really a lot of different options on the bridges and market, but they really proved relatively inconsistent for us, at least based on our criteria, or unstable. So that's what we're going to be working on developing ourselves. Q3. So what do we have for Q3? So Q3, big thing, mainnet launch, what I just talked about before, and I'm going to tease it here. The project that is the staking for synthetic assets is called Alchemy with a K. It's ALKEMY. That is the synthetic asset minting and exchange smart contracts that we've developed in-house through WASM on Cosmos. So we're going to be able to introduce that in Q3. We're really excited about it. I think it's going to introduce a different world than we've seen before with synthetic assets and DeFi. And I think it's going to have a lot of real world implications that we can talk about once it's live as well. The other things that we're thinking about for Q3 in Konstellation is really cross-chain capability, right? So once the mainnet is live, we're going to be thinking about IBC. We're going to be thinking about other ecosystems that we want to plug into. Obviously, kind of a big elephant in the room for Cosmos community is Terra, right? So, well, how do we use Terra, particularly their stable coins? How do we incorporate that into the community? Do we use that in Alchemy? Do we use that in some other use cases that can both behoove Terra, but also enhance the use cases of Dark? That's what we're thinking about. Are there other communities that are not Cosmos related that we can help and bridge some of the better features of that community with ours. So those are things that we're thinking about. Obviously, like for example, DeFi, Ethereum is the elephant in the room. So we definitely need to build and enhance the bridges that exist for Cosmos and Cosmos and Ethereum. So that's like a no-brainer that we're already working on right now to create these native cross-chain swap capabilities or cross-chain DeFi capabilities. So with that, I will pass it on to Natasha to help walk us through, our plans for marketing in the community and how we're going to make Konstellation as big as we want it to be.
Great, thanks, Sang. So essentially, what we have been talking about, what Sang has been mentioning, is really focusing on what the evolved vision for Konstellation is. And essentially what we're seeing happening is that DeFi is becoming, of course, extremely important in this industry right now. It's very much a hot topic, but there's a lot of infrastructure that still needs to be built to support this, right? And as we have gotten all these learnings from everything we've been building on Konstellation, particularly through testnets and of course through the staking module, which has evolved into our alchemy that Sang just mentioned, is that there is this need to focus a bit more on the world outside of asset management. So primarily when we first started Konstellation, we were very focused on building this infrastructure, blockchain infrastructure, to support asset management and the digitization of asset management and specifically alternative investments. As we're looking at kind of like this evolving brand of Konstellation, we're really seeing this now focus a bit more on providing infrastructure for broader capital markets. And what does that mean? That means not really siloing ourselves into asset management only, but thinking about what other cross-chain capabilities can we utilize to provide enhanced efficiencies for the system. And at the end of the day, our goal is to continue to create that value for the dark token. So everything that we're doing and a lot of these elements that we are working on, whether it be specific tech builds, how we're testing some staking modules to then become something like Alchemy, we're really focused on how we continue to build and strengthen the dark ecosystem through use cases and through what we think will be essentially really big pillars of infrastructure that's needed to continue to move this industry forward. So we're very excited about the connectivity that we're able to provide in that manner. And essentially, I think as we continue to grow Konstellation as a brand, we're going to also start to see the partners and supporters of the actual technology become a bit more integrated with Konstellation. So as we move into this kind of evolved brand and rebrand of Konstellation, we're looking at how we make it easier for people to essentially plug and play into this world of DeFi and provide those efficiencies and figure out how we can use dark as one of the key mechanisms for people to operate within this industry specific to Konstellation, and looking specifically at how Konstellation's network as a protocol in itself can help with some of these optimizations and efficiencies that we see on a broader capital markets infrastructure. So as we reframe that with the introduction of our updated white paper, which speaks to our evolved vision and how we see Konstellation playing in the new age of digitized DeFi, essentially, we're going to continue to support that through comms and, continued research and development through our both Medium and Resource Center and all of the communications we release. So a lot of that you'll see happen, which is also a bit of the work that we're doing to support Dex timing and Dex listings, is to really revamp all of our brand identity and communications. And that specifically looks like an updated website, updated social channels, more active and engaged social channels as well, and sharing more details about both DeFi, the expansion of our thoughts on how we address capital markets in this digitized fashion, and really focusing on how we can continue to support the evolving needs of Konstellation and Konstellation's partners. Because again, as more as we're able to support each part of the ecosystem, the better halo it has for the dark token as a whole. And as Sang mentioned, our ideal would to have all of these things hit at once so that we can make a lot of noise and make a big splash at the time that we get we have our official listing date socialized and ready. But we're also looking at alternative plans that help us potentially go in a more piecemeal fashion, so that in the case that some of these tech builds take a bit longer, or some of the plug and play metrics that we're trying to, or mechanisms that we're trying to put in place here, if we still need some bit learning and development on those, we're working on alternative plans that still allow us to start creating a bit more buzz and value for the dark token through the dark token ecosystem. So in addition to the brand refresh, as mentioned, we're also solidifying the marketing support for the March up to the Dex listings. And that will look like essentially a bit of marketing support for each listing that we are going to promote. So we're going to be working with these communities, especially in these Dex listings, as we announce which exchanges we list on and which ones, the order in which we list on them. We'll be putting some direct marketing support through both PR blasts and additional community engagement, along with doing more AMAs outside of our community. So we've got a bit of AMA kind of external Konstellation AMA exposure that we're working on, where we're able to tap into some broader communities and talk about the evolved mission of the project, and hopefully get those folks engaged and interested as well. There are other things that we're planning in terms of standard kind of marketing communication, digital advertising promotions, along with potential influencers as well. We'll take recommendations from the community about, you know, maybe potential agencies you guys may know of, or influencers you think may be especially great. But we're definitely being very thoughtful about how we approach this. So it isn't necessarily a big pay for play buy, but it's actually people that believe in the vision of what we're building and how we can really impact broader financial services on a global scale. So those are some of the more granular things that we'll be working on. One is kind of general rebrand of Konstellation as a whole, and the other is a marketing support to continue to support the comms that need to go out for Dex listings. So you'll start to see a lot of that come to fruition within this month. The team has been actively working on developing a lot of these assets and working through the white paper. And I think the white paper will be one of the first things that we release to the community, so you guys can react and give us some feedback, and then we'll let you keep you guys posted as we have our live date for all the other branding and comms that you'll see, but you'll also see it come through hopefully through our channels once we go live and we make a bit of a splash there. So I think that in itself is a bit more about what we're doing with Konstellation, and we're very excited about how this evolved vision, and it's not a complete shift, which is great. It's more of a how do we kind of see this world changing, and it's changing quicker than we anticipated, which brings us to this world of DeFi and how we think Konstellation can really create those efficiencies with both our protocols and the way that we're thinking about how the industry can continue to grow with a lot of these integrations, and essentially really cross-chain capabilities, which is a key, we think, for the future of the industry. So those are some of our key on marketing elements. I think that at this time, we have some of the Q&A to go through, Sang. I don't know if you want to add anything else on the marketing side, Sang. If so, go for it. Otherwise,
no,
we'll
I think you know, you hit the nail on the head, right? It's you know, what we're trying to communicate is it's a broad vision. So we definitely want to count on the community for help in how do we, you know, bring it down to like a digestible fashion. And you know, a lot of that may be, and it's something that we've been thinking about on the team side as well. It's a lot of it may be, we need to attack this piecemeal, right? Like we need to introduce these things as separate concepts, which is what we've done with Alchemy as well. And I think that's what we're going to be doing going forward, to introduce these specific use cases. Having said that, I think everyone here can appreciate a lot of our bigger, you know, broader vision that we're building at Konstellation, which is really around decentralized capital markets, right? Connecting money with where it needs to go, connecting capital with where returns are being made, which, you know, in effect sounds simple, But obviously it's a very big infrastructure play that we're targeting, possibly one of the biggest in the market right now. So pretty excited to be on that side of things. And, I know sometimes not all members of the community are always happy with us, but having said that, we're always on the same boat, right? So, we'd love for your support. We'd love for you to share. We'd love for you to, take a lot of the information that we're doing and sharing it and creating positive buzz and bringing that into the community, whether it's through Telegram or Twitter. Engage with us on Twitter. We're always there. We're always sharing information there. So help us engage, help us grow that community. So that's just a shout out to our amazing guys that have been supporting us.
Yeah, and definitely, again, thank you to our community. We definitely appreciate you guys and appreciate all the feedback and comments that we get, and the questions you guys submit, which is something that we'll go into now. We appreciate all the questions and the not repetitive nature, but I think questions have evolved a bit, which is great, in terms of, being more focused on some specifics around Dex and specifics around marketing support and how we plan to kind of roll this out. So I think we can go through some of these questions, or most of them, some of them actually were repetitive. So that's good. So that means that there's some that we'll get to all of them, I think, that were submitted. And as an FYI, we'll make sure that the sheet is updated with responses as well. So for those folks who are submitting and keeping track of the sheet itself, we'll get those answers in there updated. So let's take it from the top in terms of, let's talk about kind of company specific questions now.
So I think some of the questions that we got, what are our biggest struggles right now? Is something that we talk about every AMA. Our biggest struggles right now, still the same. We've identified a lot of amazing team members, but we're always growing the team. So identifying the right talent, identifying, I think I said this in the beginning, it's not just about talent. I think it's really about motivation coinciding with talent, which is obviously something that we're always constantly looking for. I think everyone in the industry probably is looking for it, to be honest. So, finding the right team members for various different functions, but most prominently in development is our biggest struggle, right? That's kind of our biggest struggle, but it's also our greatest opportunity because they're our greatest asset as well. What is going well? What I think is really going well is our deeper understanding of where the DeFi technology is today. I think that's really important when we're building a capital markets, right? It's not saying, hey, I staked this, it gave me 6% yield. It's not quite as simple as that. But I do think that we've spent a significant amount of time, and we've had some challenges in the beginning because we were so focused on Cosmos, to see what was happening elsewhere. And I think generally we have a pretty good idea of who will likely be the winners on technology, on specific use cases in the near or medium term future, where we can seek more collaboration. I think we're very comfortable there. I'd say if you asked me that about 6 months or a year ago, I think I'd have more question marks than statements. But I think that's been going really well for us. And that makes sense, right? Because we're going to be focused on building capital markets. Community help with anything. I'll
also add in terms of like going well, a big thing I think is just industry news and the fact that there are a lot of eyes on DeFi right now, for better or worse, whether or not they actually understand or call, label something correctly in DeFi is a whole different story. But the fact that there are actually a lot of institutions that are looking at this, and a lot of really capital market players that are trying to figure out like if DeFi is something that they should play in. This is especially an exciting time, I think, because it's really bringing together the folks that have the vision and the folks that actually understand the markets and what we can potentially build. And I think that's a very exciting time in terms of opportunity meeting market buzz, and a lot of people are actually having their ears and eyes open to figuring this out now, which is only helpful for us as we continue to try to build this infrastructure.
Cool. Community help us with anything. I think identifying right talent. If you have the talent, we're trying to centralize where we're posting some of our JDs right now. We may actually try to create a job posting site. But if you have talented smart contract developers right now in Rust, please send them our way. there are a lot of Rust developers, but I think people that are excited about DeFi, people that want to work in that space is really important. So definitely, please send them our way. The other thing that I mentioned before, right, with our community, please help us grow the community, right? Help us have more of you by sharing what we're working on, being excited about it. We'll try to engage as much as possible. We'll try to share as much information as possible on Medium. Like, it's there, right? Like, some of the times, I think some folks are like, where is this information? It's all out there. If there's a lot of information, we'll try to be as catering as possible, but we do want the community to engage, right? Like, it's not kind of like a one-way relationship right now. So, let's definitely engage with our social channel as well. So I think that's a big thing that our community can help us with right now. So that in a way that's visible and growth oriented, right? So because we already have our Telegram group, and we also have our council where we're talking about new ideas, but that's not really in the cadence of like growing the community from an organic perspective. So I think having our community engage with that would be really great. So some of the questions here, a lot of the questions that we're getting are why Dex first versus exchange listing. We're doubling down on the vision, right? So when we're thinking about decentralization, we think that's so important with so much of the censorship that's happening in the industry. We're pretty surprised by it in one way. In another way, we're not, right? Like, a lot of the things that we're seeing right now, probably the writing has been on the walls, right? That's what we're building here. Like the crux of the matter is that, there's going to be a war between those that are building decentralized systems that allow people to empower themselves and the people that don't want that to happen, right? So there's just going to be naturally a huge conflict. And, I think for the past couple of years, probably they didn't take us seriously. And not taking us seriously is something that, is probably their greatest mistake. But now there's a lashback, and I think everybody sees it here. You saw it with Binance; their bank accounts are being shut down. Like Barclays, Korean exchanges are delisting projects based on what they think is the criteria for dangerous. But in reality, that's actually a lot of regulatory pressure that's being put on a lot of Korean exchanges. The ones that fare well are the exchanges that didn't list that many coins at all. So it's like this quid pro quo of the fact that we think that centralized exchanges served their purpose in the beginning. And I think this move toward this revolution toward decentralization is it's not just an idea anymore. And it's something that we want to double down in by also becoming a part of that decentralized exchange movement, as opposed to being a centralized movement. Having said that, there's also additional liquidity that comes down the line as the dark community grows. So how that evolves is to be seen. But at least right now, we want to put a stake in the ground, no pun intended, by joining the decentralized movement by listing on Dexes. When are we timing? Do we miss the entire bull run? Hell no, we haven't even started yet, right? Like, it's just starting. We're in the first early stages. We saw some volatility this year, none the wiser. I think we're in the middle of the beginning of the bull run. That's a weird way to say it, but we're in the middle of the beginning of the bull run. What we saw before was like, what they call prime the pump, right? We're like priming the pump, and institutions are getting ready. 6 months ago, if I told you are institutions interested in DeFi, it's like by nature they can't be interested in DeFi. It's like, me being a cancer manufacturer and being interested in cigarettes. It's just not, like, they don't go hand in hand. But now everybody can't get enough of it because they realize it's the thing that could kill them. And unless they participate, it's the thing that will take their business model away. When Dex listing? Okay, so we're going to put it out there. The swap was the biggest part for us, right? So the swap was the biggest part. It's not even about the timing. The swap was the biggest part because we need to have the ERC20 version in terms of liquidity. Ran into hitches. I talked about it before. Ran into hitches. We were going down a development path, didn't pan out. We had to start again a couple of weeks ago. We're pretty close, but we don't want to say, okay, we're going to do it again. And, we screwed the pooch on that. But, we're pretty confident the next step we'll be able to get there from a development standpoint. But we do want to set a safety net. You know, we'd love to say this date specifically, but we are targeting mid-August for the listing. Having said that, though, because there are different DEX opportunities like Pancake Swap, which is another question that we got, Pancake Swap, Uniswap, and we're also part of this DEX project that's targeted to South Korea. And we'll talk about that next time. We'll hopefully have an announcement on it. Right now, it's kind of not stealth, but you know, we're still working on it kind of under wraps. But the reason we're excited about it is what I just talked about before. The regulatory clamps are coming down in South Korea, but it's one of the largest crypto markets in the world, which means the DEX opportunity is also huge. People are looking for ways out. People are looking for ways to trade without all of this restriction. Because of these DEXs have different protocols, and we also have a native Binance token right now, we may do it in lockstep. Like we might not, you know, necessarily have to do it all at once. We might be doing it, you know, concurrently. We might be doing it consecutively. It's still TBD. Obviously, the Ethereum-based DEXs are the most active, if you will. But it's mid-August. You know, we said it here. Hopefully, we can try and deliver earlier. But I think from a technical perspective, that would be the most safe mark for us right now. Market making support is another question that we got on DEXs. DEXs don't have market makers. Like that's primarily the point. We've been talking to the council. You know, it's basically very active trading, market making on a DEX. It's like it's a very active LP, putting in liquidity, taking out liquidity, putting in liquidity, taking out liquidity. And obviously there are things that happen in the market that are tied to gas costs that make sometimes these things untenable. Having said all of that, we are still standing behind the liquidity. We will provide liquidity. How much? You guys got to stop asking. It's still TBD. It's TBD because there are a lot of tokens that we're still accounting for that have not been swapped, which means we are going to basically decrease that from circulating supply. That's one. Two is it also is dependent on the swap figures. So there's only a post facto analysis that we can do, which is how many ERC20 tokens are there? How many DARK24B tokens are there? That's something that you guys decide, not us. And then I think the second component of it is how much is really circulating, because we will have Alchemy and the staking capabilities live, right? So how much of it is actually going to be locked up and staked? And all of these are going to play into the liquidity. These calculations will allow us to provide adequate liquidity to protect investors, but also to create an active market. More importantly, to create an active market for Dark. Another question that we used to get, liquidity on team tokens. Everyone's worried we're going to dump team tokens. All right. First of all, I take offense. Okay. I take offense because, like, why are we here talking to you guys if we think like we're just going to dump all these tokens, right? And that means, by the way, that there's tons of liquidity in the market for us to be able to dump all of these tokens. So all of these are good things to have. Okay. So that's step one. And that's just me kind of being frank with everybody here. Two is no, we're not going to be dumping the tokens. And in order to alleviate these concerns, what we're going to do is we're going to extend the lockup, right? So we're going to extend the lockup of all of the remaining development allocation and management and human capital allocation tokens. And that accounting is being done right now because we have paid some tokens out to team members previously that have been fully vested. So removing those, it's not a significant amount, like in the grand scheme of things, particularly based on how much we have to burn, like that's really not a big amount. Then we have the remaining tokens. The remaining tokens we're going to lock up, right? We're going to lock it up for another year. We have it fully vested as of this August, but we're going to lock it up for another year after that. It's going to be a linear vesting because we still have to give out Dark when we're hiring. When people are joining the team, we do need buckets to do that. We're going to lock that up. The seed investor pool locked up already. 1 year, non-linear. It's going to be locked up for another year. Everyone's agreed to that. Some of our larger investors, basically all of our larger investors, more or less, have agreed to lock up with us as well. So any kind of big buckets that you see, you're going to see some moving around as we're reorganizing some of the corporate wallets. All the funds are safe. No one's trying to liquidate on the side. In terms of the, sorry, what I was saying about the investor tokens, we've had our conversations with them as well. So they will be sticking long-term with us. So I think that kind of, we are trying to align interests as much as possible. I know everyone is just focused on price, but we're building, we're going to market, we're expanding our vision, we're building, we're accruing value to Dark. So a lot of that, what we want from the community, what we want to discuss is not about trading, unfortunately. I know it's important to a lot of people, but we don't see the value in the short-term trading of the token. What we've dedicated ourselves to, or what we're standing behind, is that we will provide the adequate activity and liquidity for the token. But if the only questions that come to us and we say don't talk about in the big chat, it's about pricing, etc., it's irrelevant for us to talk about. We're not going to be talking about short-term trading. So that's just me putting it out there. Having said that, like I said, the plans that we're taking are to align our interests and to alleviate any concerns. So that's what we want to do. Yeah, passing it up to Natasha for, I think, the next couple of questions.
Yep. So in terms of Dex marketing support and marketing plans and support, I think we briefly touched on it, but the goal is to, and the plan is to have marketing support for each Dex listing, including a lead up to the actual listing date, and then a kind of continued sustained plan for a few weeks while listing is active. So as those plans actually firm up with the actual lock date of when we have those Dex dates committed, we'll be sure to communicate that a bit more, simply because one, we want you guys to be excited and involved, and two, we want you to help us spread the word a bit more and participate in some of those activities. So we'll have that plan for each Dex listing is the goal. And the goal in the ideal world and scenario is that we can do them back to back in terms of the listings, not all on one day, but in a very kind of maybe about a week or 2 weeks back to back. So that's kind of what we are tooling with in terms of timing for when we kick off the first Dex listing. And we'll also be doing airdrops to key communities. We want to do our airdrop of our Dark ERC20 token. So we'll be doing some of that to some partner communities as well. And of course, we'll keep the team updated on that. So that'll be something that we share more through Medium. And when we have the actual partners identified to which we'll be dropping, we'll put those details there as well. So I think that kind of covers a lot of the key questions. Also, there will be social media, I think standard digital advertising and social media promo, that kind of just comes as a given as we do some more of these plans, particularly in this crypto world. Let me do a double check and make sure we hit all of the questions so far. And again, to remind everyone, we will do a written recap of this. So we'll have highlights and key details recapped on Medium, as well as the live stream link on our YouTube is active. So you can always reference this or take a look at this at a later time if this is not a good time zone for you right now. I think we hit all the questions saying, is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up with kind of next steps?
Yeah, actually, there was a couple of things, what Natasha talked about, right? The rebranding, the marketing. I want to tease it here. We have a new Dark logo coming that's, directly tied to our goal for capital markets, right? So it's sexy, it's new, it's on point with our marketing message and our vision. So really going to be excited to share that with everyone here. We have a new light paper coming out. So stay posted on that, right? We're putting the final touches on it. It's going to highlight a lot of these different things. It's going to highlight why we're building what's changed from the initial white paper, what's expanded from the white paper, and what we're core focused on. So that's the kind of the final 2 cents I wanted to throw out there. And before we let everybody go, thank everyone for joining here live or tuning in later on when you're available.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to echo Sang's points, everything we're doing is really focused on how we can create value for the dark token and build up the dark token ecosystem. And we appreciate everyone's comments and the community support as we work through this. And we do believe that this evolved, heightened vision that we have for the future, given a lot of the interest in the market and where we see the future really building, is really important for how we are rebranding Konstellation and bringing it back to life as we kind of move into these next stages. So we appreciate everyone's support there. In terms of next steps, again, thanks everybody who was able to tune into the AMA. Thanks for the folks in the chats and the folks who submitted questions ahead of time as well. We will get that sheet updated, as I mentioned. Recaps will be posted on Medium. You can take a look at the link here via YouTube. And our next AMA is actually scheduled for the end of August. So I think we will have some more exciting updates to share with you by then. But we'll definitely keep in touch before then. But we're looking at basically almost another month and a half or so when we will have another AMA, and we'll do it in the same fashion. We'll plan to have it video streamed, and we'll communicate some of the timing and details ahead of time for you guys. And I think that wraps it for our July AMA at this time on Konstellation. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for attending, and thanks for your support. And we look forward to next steps and building with you guys.
Stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe. Please, everyone, stay safe. All right.